Before the Great Flood, strange beings walked the earth who were not fully human. They were known as the Nephilim, born from an unholy union that should have never happened. They grew far larger and stronger than ordinary men, and nobody could ignore them. Whenever mortals saw them, they felt small and helpless. These giants took whatever they wanted, living without limits. Their presence marked the beginning of the world's deep downfall. In those generations before the Great Flood, early humans lived under the eyes of heavenly guardians known as the Watchers. These angels were sent to guide humanity. But in the days of Jared, everything went terribly wrong. A group of 200 Watchers looked down at the earth and became obsessed with the beauty of mortal women. Instead of guarding humanity, they hatched a dark plot to abandon their posts and take human wives for themselves. Their leader Samjaza feared he alone would carry the blame for this great sin. So he gathered them on Mount Hermon to swear a pact. Bound by this oath on the mountaintop, all 200 agreed to descend to earth. Each angel would claim a woman sharing the blame for whatever followed. High above in heaven, this silent betrayal went unpunished for a time. The Watchers still had their free will, and the rebellion went completely unchecked. Then, on one quiet evening, under a canopy of shimmering stars, the Watchers descended. Leaving their heavenly posts, they stepped onto the earth disguised as radiant beings. Some arrived in secret, others openly, but all of them carried an aura of otherworldly glory. The humans they met were awestruck. These fallen angels did not look like terrifying monsters. Instead, they appeared stunningly beautiful and noble, showing a gentle demeanor. At first, villagers viewed these visitors as wise teachers or even gods because of their majestic aura. Their faces shone, and their voices were soft and persuasive. No one suspected the dark intent hiding behind their warm smiles. The Watchers spoke kind words, offering forbidden gifts of knowledge, winning the trust of the people. Soon they set out to fulfill their secret pact. Each angel fixed his eyes on a woman he desired. One by one they took wives from the daughters of men. Some women came willingly, utterly mesmerized by their celestial charisma and promises. Other unions were forced or built on clever deception. Ancient texts would later tell of angels who defiled themselves with mortal women. Either way, this shattered the natural order. These mating rituals between heavenly beings and human women were strictly forbidden. Yet, for a time, life seemed normal. The Watchers lived with their human wives, and the women became pregnant. In those early days, there was a brief illusion of peace. Humans might have even celebrated these powerful angelic husbands, blind to the horrors that lay ahead. The earth itself felt a growing dread. High above, God watched with grief and fury as his chosen guardians betrayed their holy trust. Eventually, the women who married these angels began to give birth, and these were no ordinary babies. They were the Nephilim, the hybrid offspring of mortal women and fallen angels. From their first breath, everyone knew these children were different. They grew unnaturally large and powerful, dwarfing any normal human. As boys, they towered over grown men. By adulthood, they became absolute giants. In raw size and power, nothing could rival them. Villagers watched in absolute terror as a young Nephilim child shot up like a cedar tree, his appetite bottomless, and his strength impossible to contain. By the time these hybrids reached maturity, they were massive giants who uprooted trees and tossed boulders like toys. At first, humans tried to adapt, even admiring their strength. Some viewed the Nephilim as demigods or legendary heroes. Epic tales quickly spread about their incredible exploits, stories of superhuman strength, hunting prowess, and fearless courage. Some Nephilim even protected human villages from wild beasts or helped build massive structures. In those early days, humans practically worshipped them, singing praises to these mighty rulers of the ancient world. The Watchers, proud of their hybrid sons, encouraged humans to honor them. Fathers like Samjaza looked upon their half-angelic sons with immense pride, seeing them as far superior to mere mortals. For a brief moment, it seemed these giants might rule as benevolent kings. Their presence reshaped society. Humans organized their entire lives around these massive rulers, sometimes even worshiping them as living gods. But as the Nephilim multiplied, their dark nature began to surface. These giants inherited the physical power of angels, but they also possessed a terrifying hunger and boundless arrogance. They became violent, ruthless monsters with no regard for life. These monsters saw themselves as superior to everyone else. Human laws and moral boundaries meant nothing to them. Why should half-divine beings submit to the rules of mere mortals? This pride fueled a deep contempt for humanity. The giants began to terrorize and enslave the humans around them. They grabbed whatever their greedy hearts desired. If they wanted the best livestock, they took it. If they craved a grand home, they drove families out to claim it. Fear of these giants gripped every community. Villagers whispered that these children of the Watchers were not saviors, but cruel, power-hungry tyrants. And more giants spread across the land. Chaos followed them. Violent clashes broke out everywhere, sparked by the hot tempers of the Nephilim. Unmatched in strength, a single moment of anger from a giant meant instant death. Their violent rages routinely left behind broken bodies and demolished homes. The earth itself trembled beneath their heavy footsteps when they fought. Normal humans stood absolutely no chance against them. The world was shifting. Once a peaceful earth guarded silently by the Watchers, it had transformed into a terrifying place, where giants roamed and dread ruled the hearts of humanity. As the monstrous children of the Watchers spread across the land, those fallen angels were injecting forbidden secrets into human minds. Secrets that mankind was never supposed to unlock so soon. In the shadows and out in the open, they taught mankind forbidden arts and sciences, leaking secrets guarded by heaven. Secrets of metalworking, of deadly weapons, and war, of dark magic sorcery, and the signs in the skies. One rogue Watcher, Azazel, led this charge. Azazel revealed the craft of forging swords, daggers, shields, and armor. He showed humans how to extract raw metals from the earth and shape them into weapons. Under his dark mentorship, blacksmiths hammered out the very first swords and spears in human history. Fires of the forge lit up the darkness as men learned to shape iron and bronze, arming themselves for slaughter. But Azazel did not stop at weaponry. He introduced body modification, teaching them to use gemstones, pigments, and makeup to paint their eyelids and alter their faces. Women mastered the arts of seduction through makeup and jewelry, coloring their eyes with dark antimony and forging elaborate bracelets to lure desires. Once simple humans fell prey to vanity and lust, dressing in ways that sparked fierce passions and bitter jealousy. Other Watchers unleashed the secrets of witchcraft and dark spells. Their leader, Samjaza, taught root-cutting and sorcery crafts used to brew deadly potions and cast hexes. Another Watcher, Armoros, taught how to break spells. This sparked history's first supernatural war, a clash of occult magic and counter-magic. Meanwhile, the Watcher, Barakil, taught men the dark secrets of the stars and astrology, reading constellations for omens. Kokebio mapped the stellar patterns, charting the night sky. Shamsio taught the pathways of the sun, and Sario explained the phases of the moon. Every rogue angel traded cosmic secrets about the clouds. the wild weather's sacred herbs, and the art of harvesting plants for either healing medicines or lethal poisons. In the beginning, these forbidden teachings seemed like a blessing. Men farmed efficiently with iron plows, and women wore elegant fabrics and jewelry. They tracked the stars and marked the seasons. But this enlightenment came with a horrific price. Humans were entirely unready for such godlike power, and the fallen angels offered it not out of love, but to corrupt and enslave. Soon this knowledge bred chaos and slaughter, placing weapons of war into mortal hands. Simple disputes between villages erupted into absolute massacres. Where once two men might brawl with bare fists, they now wielded swords and spears, taking lives effortlessly. Murder and tribal warfare consumed the land, while the strong brutally dominated the weak. Makeup and self-adornment fueled a toxic wave of lust and vanity. Society obsessed over seduction and physical beauty, abandoning humility. Women armed with dark charms and allure seduced men into wicked acts. Tyrants used their new iron weapons to steal whatever women or wealth they craved. The sorcery taught by the Watchers birthed widespread witchcraft and pagan idolatry. Men used potions and spells to manipulate minds or summon dark spirits. By drifting into the occult, they abandoned the righteousness that God had designed for them. The fallen Watchers observed this growing chaos with absolute satisfaction. This was exactly the spiritual ruin they wanted to trigger. Mankind was now drowning in godlessness, corrupted by these dark revelations. The innocent hearts of men rotted away, turning dark. The entire earth was becoming completely defiled. The corruption of these fallen stars infected everything. If a farmer tilled the ground, he used tools forged by rebel angels. If a woman painted her face, she did so with secrets from a fallen spirit. When they looked to the stars, they followed traitors of heaven. The sacred presence of God in human hearts grew faint as they chased these wicked arts and pleasures. The Watchers, now fully fallen angels, were worshipped across the world as gods. Altars and monuments were raised to honor these shining bringers of forbidden wisdom. Humanity was completely deceived, blind to their own ruin. Yet amidst this total moral decay, a remnant struggled to walk in righteousness. Holy men like Enoch remained fiercely loyal to the Creator. Tradition tells us that Enoch received terrifying visions of the coming judgment. But for the rest of humanity, wickedness became the standard. Violence, greed, lust, and occult sorcery infested every corner of the earth. The beautiful, pristine earth was now stained with blood and defiled by dark idolatry. High above, the Creator watched, seeing everything. His divine heart broke with grief over what his creation had become. The world was racing toward a horrific catastrophe, completely unaware. While human hearts grew corrupt, the Nephilim, giants, were also changing. At first, humans stared at them in utter awe. They were massive, powerful, and mysterious, revered by many as legendary demigods. But as time passed, the giants showed no humility. They acted as if they owned the very earth. Their colossal size and brutal power made tyranny effortless. Soon, entire regions fell under their iron rule, not by choice, but because humanity could not fight back. The Nephilim demanded endless food, devouring in one day what a village needed for weeks. Mortals slaved in the fields from dawn till dusk, yet they kept none of their harvest. It was all carted off as forced tribute. Massive herds of livestock quickly dwindled to nothing. Winter grain reserves vanished into the bottomless appetites of the giants. The giants seized the finest portions, greedy for more than their share. Soon the starving farmers went hungry, and innocent children cried out for bread. Parents tried to stretch every single scrap. Desperate families gave away their last necessities just to survive one more day. As the giants plundered the earth, the land withered. Fields were overworked. Livestock was stolen faster than they could breed. The natural rhythm of life shattered. People no longer planted crops with hope, but with dread, knowing exactly who would seize their harvest. Many stopped tending the soil. Some buried their food deep underground or hid it in caves, while others fled to remote lands, praying to find a quiet corner the giants might overlook. But the Nephilim roamed everywhere, casting a dark shadow. They did not just steal food, they stole labor time and human dignity. To them, ordinary humans were worthless. A man's hard work meant nothing, and a family's safety was utterly ignored. The Nephilim ruled without laws or limits. If anyone dared say no, vengeance was swift and terrifying. Humanity learned to keep their heads down and suffer in silence, knowing each peaceful day could be their last. Meanwhile, the giants' hunger only grew, and so did their demands. The world could not satisfy their endless greed. Soon, the giants demanded more than crops and cattle, committing deeds that filled human hearts with absolute terror. Dark rumors spread between villages in quiet whispers. Travelers avoided the main roads, and families refused to light fires at night, fearing the glow would draw attention. Parents warned their children never to wander off, even for a second. This paralyzing fear did not stay contained. It swept like a shadow over the earth. Nobody felt safe in crowds, and they felt worse alone. Some built massive walls, while others fled into the mountains. Yet even the mountains offered no shelter when the giants walked nearby. A single heavy step echoed for miles, and one loud shout could silence entire towns. The Nephilim even turned on the natural world, shattering the balance of life. Animals that once roamed freely were slaughtered in massive numbers. The giants plundered without care. They had no regard for tomorrow, nor did they care about the turning of the seasons. They ignored the earth's desperate need to heal. Great herds vanished from their ancestral lands. Birds fled the skies, and wild beasts became a rare sight. The land grew cold and empty, as if life itself were being snuffed out. Then, fueled by vanity and pride, the giants turned on one another. Every giant demanded to be supreme, refusing to share territory or glory. Some gathered loyal war bands, while others claimed vast lands for themselves. Bitter factions formed, and tension built like heat before a tempest. Mere rivalry exploded into open warfare, and the very ground trembled beneath their weight. Great forests collapsed, mountainsides crumbled. Terrified humans had nowhere to run as destruction rained down from every single direction. Whenever these behemoths fought, everything around them paid the price. Their bloody wars devastated not only their own kind, but also the sanctuaries where humans fought to survive. Homes were crushed, wells poisoned, and fields ruined. The world was already bleeding, and now the agony deepened. As the giants tore themselves apart, the world grew increasingly unstable. No one could foresee where the next disaster would strike. For ordinary mankind, life became an endless season of dread. Everyone felt crushed under an unbearable, constant weight. They woke up planning to survive, and slept dreaming of danger. Many lost hope entirely, while others grew cold, hardened by constant fear. Brutality spread among humanity as well. They mirrored the violence above them. When moral law collapses at the top, chaos erupts everywhere, and weapons proliferate. Trust evaporated. Neighbors turned on neighbors, and families fought over scraps. People committed sins they once would have found unthinkable. Yet even in this pitch-black era, a remnant remained. A few righteous souls still tried to walk uprightly before God, weeping over the world's decay. Among them stood Noah, He was not blind to the wickedness around him, seeing clearly how evil had consumed the earth. He watched humanity sink deeper into corruption, realizing the giants were a physical sign of their spiritual fall. Grieving deeply, he knew the Lord's creation was never meant to be this way. This planetary suffering did not remain hidden. It drifted upward, the agony of humanity, the terror, the loss, and the mounting wickedness. Their suffering became a desperate, roaring cry that pierced the heavens. Ancient scriptures reveal that even the earth itself cried out, begging for an end to the absolute madness. The soil that once nurtured life now bore a blood-stained record of the atrocities committed upon it. High above, the holy angels watched. The great archangels Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael looked down, fully aware of the stakes. They felt no excitement, only deep sorrow and grave concern as they saw lawlessness consuming the creation. They witnessed how humanity had strayed from peace. They saw how the Watchers had abandoned their holy posts and how their giant offspring had brought ruin to the earth. And they knew one vital truth. The earth was rapidly hurtling toward a tipping point. Something had to give. The world could not endure this chaos forever. High above, in the quiet, perfect order of heaven, 4 mighty archangels stood together. There was Michael, the supreme guardian, appointed by God, and Gabriel, the bearer of divine messages, Raphael, the bringer of holy healing, and Uriel, who provides deep understanding. They met not from curiosity, but out of urgent worry. Every one of them had been observing the world closely, and the sight filled their hearts with grief. Gazing down from their celestial heights, they saw a world in agonizing distress. The earth was no longer at peace. They watched humanity struggle through terror, confusion, and sin, seeing how the fallen Watchers had abandoned their holy purpose, unleashing absolute chaos across the globe. A creation once balanced and vibrant now felt burdened and exhausted. The cries of human suffering drifted toward the heavens, not merely as spoken words, but as a heavy toll felt in the highest heavens. Nothing was hidden. Nothing was ignored. The archangels shared the agony. These archangels were no passive observers. They cared deeply for God's creation, watching with growing dread as the state of the earth worsened day by day. Instead, darkness was spreading. Every single day brought more grief, more chaos, and drove humanity further away from the Creator's holy path. The archangels knew this cycle had to end. Without immediate intervention, the entire earth would soon be corrupted beyond any hope of repair. Bound by duty, they reached a decision. They would stand and speak directly before God's throne. They came not in anger, but to lay bare the absolute truth. They begged for divine judgment, not to seek vengeance, but to restore what was broken. Approaching the Almighty, they bowed in deepest reverence. Each majestic archangel stepped forward with profound respect, and Michael was the first to speak. He detailed how the fallen angel Azazel had corrupted mankind with forbidden secrets, unleashing powerful knowledge that was never meant for mortal minds without divine guidance. These forbidden secrets poisoned human hearts, stripping away their humility. Instead of seeking righteous wisdom, humanity turned this new power toward violence and destruction. Next, Gabriel stepped forward. He spoke of Samyaza and the other Watchers who had abandoned their holy posts in heaven. He described their unholy unions with mortal women, which birthed monstrous beings outside the natural order. This wicked rebellion had thrown the entire creation into chaos. These monstrous giants, the Nephilim, shattered the peaceful course of life on earth. Wherever they walked, they left terror, devastation, and endless misery in their wake. Then came Raphael. He turned the focus toward the suffering of humanity, painting a picture of a world crushed under the heavy weight of grief. Families lay broken and communities crumbled in fear. The sacred bond between man and nature was severed, turning former joys into constant, paralyzing dread. He spoke not only of these sins, but of the exhausting, heavy weariness that had settled deep into the souls of the innocent. At last, Uriel spoke with piercing wisdom, offering a view of the grand design. He revealed how even nature itself was suffering. The balance of the seasons, the fertility of the soil, and the very rhythm of life were totally broken. Divine order had collapsed into utter confusion, and the planet could no longer survive the way Creator intended. Together, the archangels laid this grave matter before the throne, fully aware that the Creator already knew every secret. They spoke not to inform the Almighty, but to appeal to His ultimate justice and mercy. They begged Him to heal the broken world as the agony was too great and the rot was spreading fast. They pleaded for divine intervention because the earth was powerless to heal itself. The Almighty listened in total, solemn silence. He did not look away. He had witnessed everything from the very beginning: the choices of mankind, the rebellion of the Watchers, and the rising tide of darkness. He had allowed centuries to pass, giving room for repentance. But now, patience had reached its limit. The Creator felt a deep, profound sorrow. His creation was incredibly precious to Him, designed with love and holy purpose. To watch it become so twisted brought immense pain to His heart. Ancient texts reveal that the Lord was deeply grieved by how far humanity had fallen. This was not mere anger. It was sorrow bound with fierce resolve. Yet even now, His mercy remained. He saw that not every soul had abandoned the light. He saw Noah, a righteous man who still walked faithfully, refusing to join the chaos around him. Noah lived with integrity, surrounded by wickedness. The Lord saw that through this one faithful man, human life could be preserved and renewed. With sovereign authority, God declared that the world could not go on this way. A massive, holy cleansing was coming. It would wipe out the rot and offer the earth a brand new start. This purification would arrive as a catastrophic global flood, washing away the corrupt, broken order of that ancient age. Yet the Creator also decreed that the root of this corruption must be dealt with. The fallen Watchers who abandoned their heavenly duties would face full accountability. The giants who threw the world into chaos would be destroyed. Divine judgment would be precise, absolute, and completely just. The Lord then delivered strict commands to His archangels, assigning each of them a specific role. Their sacred missions were carefully chosen. Every task was part of a grand design to purge the corruption while safeguarding the righteous. Those who remained faithful would be kept safe. The instigators of darkness would be bound, and the future of creation secured. In that definitive moment, the entire course of history shifted forever. The dark era, ruled by the Watchers and Nephilim giants, was ending. Heaven had issued its decree, and the earth would soon tremble under its power. A nightmare that started with secret rebellion in the heavens would now be crushed by the Almighty's will. As the angelic voices faded, the Creator spoke. Every angelic host fell silent to listen. His voice was calm, steady, and filled with heavy, unyielding purpose. Every single word held absolute weight. This divine decree would reshape the earth's future, spelling doom for a corrupted age that had drifted so far from the light. The Creator first turned His attention to Uriel, the archangel of light and wisdom, charging him with a mission of life and death importance. He commanded Uriel to descend to Noah, a righteous soul, living quietly in the shadow of a civilization that had completely abandoned goodness. But Noah's heart stood firm. The Creator selected him not for worldly power, but for his deep, unwavering faith. Uriel's mission was to warn him of the apocalypse, He had to tell Noah that catastrophic waters would soon submerge the planet. This revelation was not a threat of punishment, but a divine shield to protect him. The Lord told Uriel to explain the path of salvation so that the human race could survive through him. Noah was commanded to build a massive wooden vessel, an ark strong and pitched to shelter his family and every kind of living creature. This great work would require years of grueling labor and absolute trust. As Uriel spoke these heavy words, Noah listened intently. He had never even imagined a global deluge, yet he did not question the warning. He simply believed. Day after day, Noah and his sons labored under the sun, felling massive trees, shaping heavy beams, and building precisely according to the divine blueprint. Neighbors mocked and went about their lives without a single worry. But Noah remained focused. While the rest of the world fell into deeper darkness, he quietly prepared for the end. After this, God spoke to Raphael, the angel of healing and restoration. Raphael was charged with securing Azel, a rogue watcher whose sins had brought devastation to the earth. Azel had corrupted humanity, whispering forbidden secrets that fueled pride, violent conflict, and reckless excess. The Creator commanded Raphael to banish Azel from this realm, cutting off his dark influence forever. Raphael was ordered to seal Azel in a dark, desolate abyss, hidden from humanity, starved of light, and buried far beneath the earth. There, the Watcher would languish, stripped of his power to deceive mankind. This judgment flowed from pure justice, for the wickedness had gone too far. Raphael was also tasked with mending the broken earth, healing the scars left by Azel's corrupt secrets. The soil, the people, and the fragile balance of life needed restoration. Next, God turned to Gabriel, the warrior angel, summoned for swift and decisive action. Gabriel was sent to deal with the giants, the monstrous offspring of the Watchers who had grown wild and terrorized the land. The Lord declared their reign was finished. Their days were numbered. There would be no mercy, no long life, and no place for these giants among mankind. Instead, their own toxic pride and bloody rivalries would destroy them. The dominion of the giants was about to shatter. No amount of strength could protect them. Massive numbers could not save them. Their era was ending, and the world would forget them. Then the Creator turned to Archangel Michael, commander of heaven's armies. Michael was commanded to round up the remaining rogue watchers who had abandoned their holy posts. These celestial beings had betrayed their sacred duty. Now the Lord ordered them bound and dragged away from the world they had corrupted. Michael had to round them up and lock them away in a dark subterranean prison deep beneath the earth. There they would rot for generations, powerless to trouble humanity or poison God's creation. They would have plenty of time to contemplate their betrayal while the world moved on without them. This dark imprisonment would endure until the final day of judgment appointed by God. The Lord also promised to cleanse the lingering poison of the Watchers. Every dark spell and corruption they introduced would be swept away. This was about restoring divine order, not just punishing the fallen. The Creator wanted a world where humanity could thrive in peace, raising families without terror, where fields would flourish again, and truth would rule. Through these judgments, the Lord proved both His justice and His mercy. He never abandoned His creation. Instead of wiping out humanity, He cleared a path for redemption. The crooked would be made straight. The broken would be given a chance to heal. The archangels accepted their divine orders with solemn resolve. Each one felt the immense weight of the mission ahead. This was no victory celebration. It was a sobering duty. Heaven was finally answering a long age of rebellion, and catastrophic change was now inevitable. Down on earth, warning signs were starting to show. A deep unease settled over the world. The rogue watchers knew their days of freedom were numbered. A few begged for help too late, while others desperately searched for a place to hide. Some cried out for mercy, praying for a reprieve. But the decree was absolute. The dark era of the fallen angels and their giant offspring was coming to an end. All that remained was executing the divine sentence. Heaven's forces were on the march, and the days ahead would reshape the world forever. While heaven readied its wrath, the Nephilim still roamed the earth, completely blind to the doom heading straight for them. Massive and unmatched in power, these giants believed they were immortal rulers. For generations, brute force had kept them at the top of the world. The thought of their own destruction never crossed their minds. These Nephilim had spread far and wide across the land. Many settled near lush river valleys where resources were rich. Others claimed the rugged highlands and open plains, high ground where they could watch their empire and feel untouchable. Wherever they walked, fear followed. Peace vanished from the valleys they claimed. Humans lived in constant terror, whispering and hiding. Even nature fell silent around the giants, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. While these monsters differed in personality, not one possessed a shred of humility. They grew up knowing they were superior. Since childhood, they were bigger, faster, and stronger than any mortal. This bred a toxic belief that they were born to dominate simply because they had the power to. They never learned patience. They never learned restraint. Brute force solved every problem they encountered. In time, raw power was the only god they worshipped. The Nephilim revered their fathers, the fallen watchers, as glorious beings of light and supreme authority. Some believed they possessed a divine right to rule, while others just loved the cruelty. They gathered thralls, demanded worship, and tolerated no disobedience. They built no great civilizations, ruling only through raw terror. Wherever a giant walked, humans scrambled to stay out of his path. But the earth could not sustain their massive appetites forever. The giants sensed the famine coming, but they couldn't comprehend why. Crops failed, and animals vanished. Yet instead of looking inward, the Nephilim grew even more demanding, squeezing the land for everything it had. They blamed humanity for the shortages, a delusion that pushed them further out of balance and closer to total ruin. The Nephilim grew restless. With no enemies left to conquer, they turned on each other. Pride consumed them. Every giant craved ultimate glory. Feats of strength escalated into bitter contests, and those contests sparked deadly rivalries. Rivalries soon erupted into open warfare. Once a united, terrifying force, they were now completely shattered by envy and bloodlust. The conflict started slowly. A crossed border, a remembered insult, a challenge left unanswered. But the spark was lit. Gradually, tension spread among them like a slow-burning fire. Factions formed, and trust withered away. The very power that once made them supreme now made living together impossible. Their sheer size left no room for peace, and watching humans sensed the coming shift. No longer did the giants move as a single force. Their unity fractured, bringing not peace, but a heavy sense of dread. Wherever the giants clashed, the earth suffered. Roads crumbled, homes were crushed, and nearby tribes fled for their lives without warning. The world grew more unstable by the day, yet the Nephilim failed to realize these events were not random. They were blind to the invisible hand guiding human history. Heaven had already decreed their era was over, and their internal warfare was merely the beginning of the end. What they mistook for a war of dominance was actually the final chapter of their story. A strange, creeping dread began to settle over them. The very sky shifted, the air grew thick, and the nights stretched long, carrying distant sounds. Even the mightiest giants sensed an unstoppable power approaching, yet pride blinded them. They refused to seek answers, trusting only in what they could grasp and destroy. As war and hunger thinned their ranks, their massive legacy slipped away faster than they could ever realize. Earth that once shook beneath their massive feet slowly fell silent. Their immense size, once their greatest weapon, was now a fatal curse. They could neither adapt nor step aside. Bred for dominance rather than balance, the Nephilim never truly belonged to the natural order of the earth. Spawned from a forbidden union, they were never meant to exist. Their statures were too massive, their hungers too heavy, their presence far too disruptive. The earth bent under their weight, but it could not sustain them forever. As their final hours neared, these titans stood at the edge of oblivion, completely unaware. Though their massive footprints scarred the land, their fate was sealed. The epoch of the Nephilim was closing, not with glorious battle, but with absolute silence. What followed would be a clean, reshaped world where their colossal forms survived only in faded memories and ancient whispers. And far beyond their sight, the great waters were being prepared. The change arrived silently. No omens appeared in the sky to warn them. No tremors shook the earth to warn the Nephilim. They simply went on living, relying on their brutal size and muscle. Sure that the earth was theirs, they believed no power could ever dethrone them. They feasted, fought, and boasted. Ignorant that their golden age was finished, petty arguments flared. Old grudges were resurrected, and their towering pride grew even sharper. Warriors who once fought side by side now glared with dark suspicion. A single glance triggered offense, and a passing word was taken as a challenge. Slights they once ignored became intolerable. Respect dissolved, patience died. But these shifting hearts were not the work of chance. The archangel Gabriel moved silently, executing God's divine command. He raised no voice, nor did he strike a blow. Instead, he let their own monstrous pride consume them. The obsession to outshine all others took root, and honor could no longer be shared. Soon their great assemblies turned tense. Voices boomed, accusations flew, and bitter comparisons were hurled in the open. Who possessed more strength? Who ruled more territory? Who deserved absolute worship? Empty boasting quickly turned to physical, bloody war. The Nephilim fractured into bitter factions, turning on their own kind. When these titans marched to war, the earth shuddered. Soil trembled under their heavy stride. Forests were leveled, mountains fractured, and their savage war left permanent scars across the land. Battlegrounds were left ruined and desolate. Blind to the destruction, the giants cared only for absolute victory and proving their dominance. For the first time, mankind witnessed the giants divided. From afar, human tribes watched in terror and shock. A few felt hope, praying their oppression might end. But most felt deep dread, knowing that caught between giants, none would survive. Nowhere was safe anymore, even the remotest wilderness. As days bled into weeks, fewer titans remained standing. Their legendary power became their undoing. Their immense size prevented rest, and constant rage slowly drained their life force. One by one, the mighty overlords vanished from the face of the earth. Their epic was imploding. High above, the fallen watchers witnessed their children's doom. These rebellious angels had once boasted of their monstrous offspring. Now they saw their dark legacy crumble, their stolen power slipping away forever. Terror gripped the fallen angels. They knew this was no accident. God's divine judgment was unfolding exactly as decreed. Some watchers fled, searching desperately for a place to hide. A few prayed they might escape notice, but no corner of creation lay beyond God's reach. As the age of giants crumbled, the archangel Raphael set out to execute his mission, hunting for Azazel. This dark angel had already withdrawn into deep exile. No longer teaching or corrupting humanity, Azazel clearly sensed that his wicked influence had reached its absolute end. Raphael tracked him to a barren, silent desert far from mankind. There was no fight. Azazel's dark power was completely shattered. Binding the rebel, the archangel dragged him from the light. Azazel was cast into a sealed, pitch-black abyss, frozen in absolute darkness. There he would rot, unable to poison the earth any longer. With this great corruptor bound, the land could finally breathe and heal. Simultaneously, the archangel Michael executed his orders, rounding up the remaining watchers, including their chief, Samjaza. These entities had once walked freely between heaven and earth. Now their dominion was shattered, and their time polluting humanity was over. Michael acted with absolute precision. Every single watcher was dragged down, locked deep beneath the crust, forever isolated from the world they corrupted. Locked away for an age they could no longer sway humanity. The fallen watchers who once steered mankind could only watch history unfold without them. Once the final angel was locked away, an eerie silence washed over the earth. The deafening presence of the giants had vanished. That suffocating grip of the watchers was finally gone. For the first time in ages, the earth felt still heavy, but calm. A few scattered survivors wandered through the ruins, stepping carefully through a world now defined by total silence and uncertainty. An era of absolute chaos had closed. But one final act remained. In the shadows, far from sight, Noah's Ark stood ready. The labor was done, and the hour was close. The earth had been purged of giant corruption, and the ultimate cleansing was about to begin. The angels retreated. Their mission was over. The rest was up to God alone. The age of the Nephilim was done, and the floodwaters were ready to rise. Doom did not strike with screaming or fire from heaven. It arrived softly creeping, in slow and steady, almost peaceful, as if offering creation one final breath. The morning sun still climbed the sky. Everyday people still went about their routines. The last surviving villages woke to a normal morning. Breakfast was cooked, chores were done, kids played. Nobody suspected that this ordinary day would lead to their absolute destruction. Only Noah waited with bated breath. He had built the massive ark exactly as the Lord had commanded. It towered over the dry ground, pitch-sealed and massive, a strange sight unlike anything ever seen. Thousands had stared and wondered. They mocked, they questioned, and they scoffed. A colossal vessel stranded on dry land made absolutely no sense to minds blinded by disbelief. Yet Noah did not fight back. He offered no explanations. He just kept working in silent obedience, resting his faith in God's warning. When Judgment Day arrived, Noah assembled his family. His wife stood close, along with his 3 sons and their wives. Beasts arrived, 2 by 2, calm and orderly, led by a silent divine pull. Once they were all inside, the heavy door shut. But Noah did not close it. A hand from above sealed the gate, cutting off the dying world from what lay ahead. Moments later, the sky turned dark. Twisted clouds gathered in unnatural patterns. The atmosphere grew thick, and the breeze died before howling back to life. Thunder rumbled, a deep, ominous vibration shaking the ground. Then the downpour started. It looked like a normal rainstorm at first, but the heavy drops never stopped. A deafening roar filled the air. Muddy pools formed on dry peaks, and as the torrential rains kept falling, a deeper terror awoke. The fountains of the great deep burst open. Subterranean oceans erupted, unleashing torrents of water kept hidden since the dawn of creation. Raging rivers carved through dry soil. valleys were swallowed up. The entire land dissolved as sheer panic swept through the watching crowds. Some scrambled to grab valuables. Others fled toward mountain peaks. Many froze in pure terror. But the relentless deluge only grew stronger. It poured day and night relentlessly with no sign of stopping. The rising tide slowly swallowed the surrounding hills. Forests sank beneath the waves. Ancient pathways vanished. Lifelong homes disappeared under a boundless gray ocean, while the roar of water drowned out all else. The world shrank as the floodwaters swallowed the continents. Yet the giant Nephilim stood defiant against the rising tide, outlasting everyone else. Their massive stature kept them above the waves as humanity drowned. Fleeing to the highest peaks, they stood defiant, convinced the flood would eventually recede. They had always relied on raw power, expecting the earth to submit. Instead, the relentless waves kept climbing higher and higher. The rains raged on. The abyss remained wide open. Soon, even the tallest peaks were submerged, leaving the desperate giants with nowhere left to run. The physical might that once dominated the planet was powerless against God's judgment. One by one, those mighty titans slipped beneath the black water. Their wicked era ended in total silence, never to return. Across the globe, civilizations lay buried under the endless deep. Every sound of human life was completely erased. The rising sea claimed everything, leaving a blank and lifeless world. Only Noah's Ark drifted safely above the abyss, cradled by the endless sea. Inside, the days bled together in slow motion. With the constant patter of rain overhead, the survivors waited in the dark. Unsure when this trial would end, they trusted the God who had spared them. Finally, the downpour slackened and ceased. A heavy silence fell before a great wind swept across the face of the waters. The floodwaters slowly receded, revealing the rugged mountain peaks. The ark drifted to a halt, but Noah remained inside, waiting. He did not rush out. He listened patiently. When the soil dried, the door swung open, and they stepped into a completely fresh, silent world. The air smelled sweet. The land was still. No towering giants roamed the valleys, and no fallen angels ruled over mankind. The ancient oppression was broken. High above a glowing rainbow appeared a sacred covenant that the earth would never be destroyed by water again. Humanity would rebuild, starting fresh. The bound watchers remained locked in darkness, and the Nephilim were gone for eternity. Their reign was over. Future generations would only whisper their legends. Noah offered sacrifices, ready to repopulate the earth with his family. Even as the memory of the pre-flood world faded, the stark warning remained. This marked the absolute end of the giants. The deep oceans swallowed their history, leaving only a quiet, cleansed world. Creation rested, preparing for a brand new chapter, as the waters finally vanished. As dry ground emerged, a holy stillness settled over creation. The earth stretched out wide, beautiful and peaceful in a way they had never experienced. No terrifying silhouettes loomed on the horizon. No demonic shadows stretched across the plains. The dark era of the Nephilim was finished, and nothing like them would ever walk the earth again. The land itself finally rested. Hills stood untouched. Valleys lay silent. Rivers flowed calmly, free from fear of being claimed. Where those giants once stood, only open space remained. The ground carried no sound of heavy footsteps, no trace of massive beings demanding attention. The world felt lighter, as if a massive weight had been lifted. Noah and his family moved carefully across this renewed earth, remembering the world before the great flood. They remembered the giants who ruled without restraint, whose very presence dictated daily survival. Life before the deluge was lived under constant pressure. Now, for the first time, humanity stood alone. No towering figures watched over them or claimed ownership of the earth. The Nephilim left no trace behind to rise again. Their bodies were gone, buried deep within the earth. Their cities were completely washed away. Every tool, every mark, and every symbol lay buried beneath layers of soil and stone. Only memory remained. The world moved forward, but the past was never erased from the minds of the survivors. As families grew, stories were told to the children. The Nephilim were spoken of in quiet whispers, not as heroes, but as a warning. Elders explained these giants were never meant to exist. They were born from a union that shattered natural order. Their strength was real, but they had no divine purpose. They did not build a better world. They consumed it. The legends never praised their size or power, focusing instead on the chaos they brought: fear, loss, and confusion. A world where ordinary people could not live freely. A world where divine balance was shattered. These stories were passed down so future generations would understand why the flood had come and why that dark age was never allowed to return. Over time, details faded. Some accounts made the giants larger than life. Others turned them into mere legends. But beneath every myth, the truth remained the same. The Nephilim were a dark warning of what happens when strength has no limits. The fallen angels, the watchers who fathered them, remained far from the world. They never returned. They did not guide or teach humanity again. Their influence was severed. The earth was no longer shaped by beings who did not belong here. Humanity was left to walk its own path, guided by wisdom meant for humans alone. The new world grew slowly. Fields were planted and homes were built with care. People learned to live without fear of being dominated. The land responded. Crops flourished and wild animals returned. Life followed its natural rhythm once more. Yet the memory of the Nephilim never fully faded. It lived in caution, kept alive in stories told by firelight. It lived in the realization that not everything powerful is good, and not everything mighty is meant to last. The giants were gone, but their story remained as a warning boundary, a reminder that creation has order, and when that order is broken, the price is devastating. The Nephilim were not defeated by physical strength. They were removed because they did not belong in the world they tried to rule. The Great Deluge closed their chapter forever. No seed remained. No return was possible. Their era ended beneath the waters, and a deep silence followed. So the world moved forward without them. Humanity pushed on, guided by memory and divine promise. The earth breathed again. This was the end of their story. The age of giants was over. The world was granted a new beginning, and the name of the Nephilim faded into history. After these biblical giants vanished, the world entered a long, unfamiliar silence. It was not a peaceful silence at first, but the heavy silence that follows an absolute catastrophe. For generations, people had lived knowing that somewhere beyond the hills or across the plains, giants walked the earth. Even when unseen, their terrifying presence shaped every decision. When they vanished, humanity did not immediately feel free. Instead, people felt exposed, as if something massive had been ripped away, leaving them unsure of what would take its place. The land itself seemed to pause. Vast regions stood untouched, waiting to see what would happen next. Paths once avoided were slowly reclaimed, and abandoned settlements were approached with extreme caution. People moved carefully, listening for heavy footsteps that never came. Many nights passed without deep sleep because fear does not fade easily. Even without the Nephilim, their memory lingered. But as time passed, the heavy silence began to soften. Without heavy steps and looming shadows, the world slowly breathed again. Fields were planted without fear of theft, and water sources were shared instead of guarded. Families gathered without constantly watching the horizon. These simple shifts meant everything. Life was no longer just about survival. Children were born who had never seen a giant. They listened to the stories told by their elders, wide-eyed and curious. To them, the Nephilim sounded unreal, like monsters from another world. They asked how such massive beings could exist and then just vanish. The elders explained that the giants were not part of creation's true order. They were strong, but power without balance never lasts. The Nephilim became a lesson instead of a threat. Their story was told to inspire understanding rather than fear. People spoke of how the giants stole without care, how they lived without limits, and how their presence brought chaos wherever they went. These stories were preserved so the mistakes of the past would not be repeated. The Watchers were remembered only in fragments, their names fading away. What remained was the solemn truth that not all power is meant to rule, and not every gift should be used without restraint. The earth suffered when divine boundaries were crossed, and healing only came when those boundaries were restored. The land slowly recovered, and places once scarred by conflict and neglect began to heal. Grass returned. Trees grew where none had stood before. Wild animals spread across open spaces, and rivers settled into steady paths. People learned to live with humility. They no longer believed they were untouchable. The memory of the great flood lingered deep in their souls. They knew the world could shatter in an instant if sacred boundaries were ignored. This truth shaped how they built their cities and raised their children. As generations passed, the terrifying era of the Nephilim faded, but was never truly forgotten. Their history became etched into the soul of humanity. It explained the scars of our world and warned why certain ancient lines must never be crossed again. The giants left behind no wisdom, no monuments, and no future. They left only an empty void and a terrifying warning. Yet in that warning, mankind found a path forward. The world pressed on, imperfect but watchful. So began the great era of rebuilding. Silence replaced terror, and order conquered chaos. The earth moved forward, burying the heavy memory of those fallen giants beneath its soil, while humanity embraced its fragile second chance. The Nephilim belonged to a violent world washed away by the waters. They ruled for a season, scarred the earth with their power, and then vanished forever. None of their bloodline was meant to survive. Their tale stands only as a dark reminder of what happens when divine boundaries are shattered. With the giants gone, the world moved on, leaving mankind to carefully rebuild from the ashes. The reign of the Nephilim was over, and a new dawn for the earth began.